Here we have to.
There we go. Welcome, comadres and friends. I'm Dr. Nora de Hoyos Comstock, the national and international founder of Las Comadres para las Américas. The leadership team and I are pleased to have you join us for tonight's teleconference. And because we're celebrating our Sweet 16. You must know that by now, though. We talk about it all the time. It has been our privilege to support Latino authors throughout these 16 years, and we look forward to many more years to come. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to readers following us on our live Twitter chat at Read Latino Lit. Tonight, please help us welcome author Melania Luisa Marte. As author V. Castro resides in the UK, due to the time difference, her interview was pre-recorded earlier today, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. Our apologies for that. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Please keep yourselves on mute. You can keep your videos on. We suggest you put yourself on speaker mode, but if you want to do gallery so you can see the other attendees, feel free to do that. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. But first, let's start with our book club's history. Comadre Tess?
Buenas noches, comadres. I am Tess Tobin, project manager of Las Comadres and Friends Book Club. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York in Comadre Maria Ferrer's apartment. After a brief hiatus, Nora Comstock re-envisioned and relaunched the book club nationwide to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores, and to support our Latino writers. We started our teleconferences in October 2007. This year, we are celebrating our Sweet 16 and are delighted to be sharing works by Latino authors with all of you. We created the teleconferences and book club to entice everyone to read more Latino authors and to learn about Latino roots and the different perspectives on Latino culture and heritage. Our book club and Zoom teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word. We encourage you to join our local book clubs in your city or time zone. We have clubs in 12 cities that are meeting virtually and now some in person. There is sure to be one that can fit your schedule. If your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, visit our website at latinolit.com. So please invite others to join us. Comadre Karen, take it away.
Welcome, comadres and friends, to our December 2023 Zoom teleconference. I'm Karen Gonzalez, Assistant Coordinator for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club, Denver Comadres Book Club Facilitator, and co-founder of the Colorado Alliance of Latino Mentors and Authors. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our interview is with author Melania Luisa Marte, an American writer, poet, and musician from New York, living between Dallas and the Dominican Republic. Marte's poetry explores her Caribbean roots, intersectionality, and self-love. Her most viral poem, Afro-Latina, was featured by Instagram on their IGTV for National Poetry Month and has garnered over 9 million views. Her work has also been featured by Ain't I Latina, Me Too, The Root, Teen Vogue, Facebook, Telemundo, Remezcla, Pop Sugar, Afropunk, and People en Español. Interviewing Melania is Nilda Diepa, Vice President of the Florida Writers Foundation, which promotes literacy in the state of Florida. She was also leader of the Maitland Writers Group and the author of the award-winning book, Alborada, a poetic memoir across cultures. Comadre Nilda, take it away.
Hello. Hi. Good evening, Melania. I'm so excited to talk to you about your book. As a Puerto Rican poet, I felt kind of a certain kinship with you, even before I opened the book, because growing up, when learning about the Dominican Republic, being located between between Cuba and Puerto Rico, I was taught a fragment of a poem by Lola Rodriguez de Tio. You probably were taught that same poem because a lot of Cubans I've heard that have been taught that. It says, Cuba y Puerto Rico son de un pájaro las dos alas, reciben flores o balas sobre el mismo corazón. Translated is, Cuba and Puerto Rico are the two wings of one bird. They receive flowers or bullets on the same heart. Whatever one island experiences, the other one feels. So I was very excited to read your work as that of a dear family member. So the tone of my questions comes from the fact that I learned to be connected to you before you were even born. So first, I want to congratulate you on this first poetry collection. I am so excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We understand that you were in the delivery room when you got the news that 5 publishing houses wanted your poetry. How did that feel?
It got me very excited. All of a sudden, I wasn't in pain.
So you were giving that a luz, a book that would soon the light of day, and also a baby.
Yeah, it was a super surreal experience and really beautiful experience. And I'm super just grateful for my agents who they're rock stars, and they really believe in me, and they have surpassed my expectations. I've heard lots of horror stories from Latinos who have had literary agents tell them that, that our stories don't sell or this or that, but my agents have been nothing but steadfast and dedicated and super insightful. And they're not Latinas. They're 2 white women who are non-Latinas, and they're just amazing. So it's just really wonderful to have my debut out in the world, and I'm just excited for, some of the other stuff that I'm working on. And hopefully soon they'll also see the light of day.
Wonderful. That's so exciting. So at the very beginning of the book, you say that Merriam-Webster Dictionary does not recognize the term Afro-Latina. And you underscore that you're not Black and Latina, but a Black Latina. So can you give us your definition of Afro-Latina?
Yeah, so
Why?
to me, yeah.
Yeah.
So to clarify, that poem was written before it actually was entered into the dictionary. Now it has entered, and I think I may have had something to do with that. Maybe my viral helped amplify the term Afro-Latina. But at the time, and I actually had written a petition for it on change.org, and the petition was for exactly that, was defining Afro-Latina. And Afro-Latina is just Black woman or Black person who is a descendant of has African descendencia, but is also has Latino roots. And so the real importance is not to separate the two, is to understand that those lineages are intertwined, right? That if you are from the Americas and you have roots in the Spanish-speaking Americas, then your Latinidad is not something that you just take out of your story. It's something that comes along with it. And whether you're speaking in English or Spanish or whatever language, you are understanding that you don't have to, hyphenate yourself or dilute yourself or choose between different worlds, right? Because I think that for many of us, our cultures are that of being de aquí y de allá, right? That saying of no soy de aquí ni de allá. And I don't say no soy de aquí ni de allá. I say soy de aquí y soy de allá, because my world is just much broad. Like, I'm not going to choose. I think if we look at ourselves from a lens of being all global citizens, why would we choose one part of our identities over the others? If we are truly trying to understand our full humanity, then we have to allow ourselves to be more than one thing, right? To not be a monolith, to not flatten ourselves, right? To allow our full dimensionality of our who we are, to just let it stand in all its glory. And so I think that poem for me gave me strength and gave me clarity on the kinds of stories I want to tell. And I don't want to write stories that flatten Afro-Latinas into just being this one type of person or one type of woman or one type of being. And so it sort of gave me the freedom to explore the fullness of my identity, right? Because not only I grew up in New York, I was born in New York, I grew up in New York, but then I also moved to the South and I live in Dallas now. And then I go back and forth to the Dominican Republic. And so like it would be so silly of me to just flatten my narrative, right, and my identity and the way I function around multiple identities and in a very diverse society. And I think that we're at a point in the diversity in the United States and the diversity around the world, right? Because so much of migration is having to shift culture and expand culture to make room for all of us. And so this book is just a little, you know, offering in that broader conversation of global citizenship, right? Of understanding that we are so much more beautiful and so much more vast than what Western media pertains or portrays us to be. And so I am one of those women who makes, you know, good kind of trouble. And I like to just remind folks to just expand their views on what it means to be Black, what it means to be Latina, what it means to be American, what it means to be a part of the global diaspora of all of our different pockets and ethnicities. And so I hope that this kinds of I know it's like very confusing for a lot of people who like live in this binary of like race being your full identity or nationalism being your full identity, but some of us are many things, and so we have to make room for each other.
So how can we support Afro-Latinas?
For one, it's giving us a mic. I mean, very few Latinas are even given an opportunity to even speak on their stories. I can count on my hands how many Afro-Latinas I know who are in publishing. So that's not a good look. You know, it's like things like that just remind you of, I like to say this and like, so, you know, some people are like, oh, that's extreme, but we are technically decimal points in the publishing industry. And so, I mean, the percentage of Afro-Latina writers who get these kinds of big 5 publishing deals is like, it's literally decimal points. And so remind folks how important it is to pour into the arts, right? To allow us the opportunities to even explore our stories. And I consider myself a sort of documentarian in that way, because I think that through poetry, I'm also working on a novel, but like through different forms of writing, we're able to really portray and sort of just document so much of our history. And that's something that's been very near and dear to me, especially as we're seeing just politically this pushback on expanding what it means to be American, what it means to be, you know, Black in America, what it means to be white in America, what it means to be Latino in America. And so I'm very, I'm one of those like, I'm not done speaking, you know, like I have so much more I want for folks. I want, you know, I like to center the regular Latinas, and I love to just like explore stories from their lenses, you know, and I always say this often, that the women in my family are matatanas, because they're so just, they've always, the decisions they've made in their life have been so fearless. And sort of the regular Latina is a fearless woman, right? And the regular Black woman that I know is a fearless woman. And so what is it like for women of color to take center stage, right? To not allow their stories to be diluted, to get to tell their stories from their perspectives, right? And I'm
Uh-oh. You have frozen.
Okay, we'll wait a minute until see what happens.
Is my dog still bothering you?
I don't know. I don't hear it.
Good.
Maria, are you there?
I'm here, but I don't know what I don't know what I can do. Hang on.
You're not frozen?
Am I frozen? No.
I think it's on Melania's.
Yeah.
side.
Do you have her phone number to text her?
I'm gonna put it in the message. Oh, what happened?
She
She
probably
probably
left to
just
come
went
back.
out to come back in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's give her a moment. Yep, there she is.
I'm so sorry. My laptop, I thought it was charging and it was unplugged and it died on me.
Okay, there you are.
There you are. Hello again.
Yeah, I thought my laptop was charging, but it was actually unplugged and it died on me.
Well, welcome again. Ah, I have another question about the title of your book because plátanos have a very important role in Puerto Rican, Cuban, and Dominican cooking. We prepare the plátanos in slightly different ways in each one of our islands, but they're still a staple of our meals. So what inspired the book title, and what do plátanos symbolize to you, and why are they important to your poetry?
Yeah, so I could have chosen many different root vegetables, many different, like there's so much that grows on the island. If it's yuca, batata, plátanos, but I chose plátanos because for one, they're one of my favorite foods. I mean, my whole life, like every meal has some kind of at least once a day, Dominicans are eating plátanos, and that's something that I thought was beautiful. And in the Caribbean, Caribbean folks love plátanos. But on the broader spectrum, right? Plátanos are very African food, and so when I thought of the theme of this collection being sort of how we unravel the history of the Dominican Republic, right? And I wanted to find something to ground the collection in that was very Black, very Caribbean, very Afro-Descendiente, and very Dominican. And Dominicans, I mean, you see the memes on Twitter with the plátano dancing and like all of that, but Dominicans love plátanos. But really, a lot of it's such a traditional food because our African ancestors use plantains as a very important food group because it grew so easily on the island. And in 2020, I spent a year farming plantains. And really, I chose plantains because plantains, they were just growing in my mom's back. My mom has like 4 acres in her backyard in the Dominican Republic, and I was living there, and I just noticed how easily they would just grow. You would plant one. I mean, you would plant one, leave it alone, and you'll come back, and in a month, it's like 10, 20 of them sprouting, babies sprouting. And so I was super fascinated by their resilience, how intuitive they are in terms of growing in the soil, and the fact that when I started doing research on Santo Domingo, because Santo Domingo is the first slave port in the Americas. And when I learned, I did an Afro history tour in Santo Domingo by a friend of mine who does it. And she took us to the port of entry where the enslaved folks were brought in into the island. And I was super moved by something that she told me, which was that through the same port of entry where the enslaved folks were brought in, that was also the same port of entry, because they were also considered cargo. That was the same port of same port of entry where a lot of the fruits that would and vegetables that would begin to be grown on the island were brought in. And so plantains was one of the things that was brought on a ship as well. And it moved me. I was like super like just wow, like so emotional about it. And so I was like, what would it be like to tell the story of Afro descendants through the perspective of the plátanos, who were also, uprooted and just forced to develop some form of evolution on land that was not original to them, right? And that to me was like, I think I can nail it. Let me try it. And so I just kept on writing poems as they would come to me of that, the sort of that familial interconnectedness that the Plantains have with Afro-Descendientes. And yeah, it's just, to me, it's like sort of a beautiful, bittersweet way of you know, turning something that was a terrible story and a terrible history into something that sort of blossomed into heirlooms and a beautiful way to honor my lineage and my history. And I think it's I think this collection sort of lives in the grief and the love. And I think for me, Plantains is sort of that. It's like this thing that grounds you. It's this thing that reminds you of who you are, of how you love, of how your people love, of how your people love the soil. And also this thing that tells a story, you know. And I think often if we listen to nature, if we listen to the spirits, if we listen to the earth and the soil, I think that we would be able to prevent so many things from repeating themselves, because the earth has been a witness to so much, you know. And I think often when we think of history, we sort of think of it from, you know, either the victim or the oppressor's perspective, the oppressed or the oppressor. But I always wonder, and like I say, like you know, I always wonder what the green things think about it. You know, those seeds, those seeds that have been planted, those trees that have been uprooted, those crops that have been, you know, just having to just travel the world and see so much. And so I sort of wanted to invoke that in the reader, to see the world through, you know, a bird's eye view, an ant's eye view, like sort of different perspectives on what it means to be a part of this, you know, bigger ecosystem of just global earthlings who are just trying to, you know, survive, you know.
I love that. It's such a beautiful image, you know. And as a Puerto Rican, we talk about having the plantain stain. Like we all have a little bit of African blood in us, no matter what we look like, and we can't wash that off no matter what. You know, that plantain stain stays with you wherever you go. So about the writing experience, how did the writing experience change you? How did it free you to become a better person, a better writer?
Oh, it did so much for me, because when I started writing this collection, I was deep in a depression. I was very anxious and very depressed, and it gave me room to just sort of vomit on the page. Like I really think that a lot of the poems were more rants than anything. But it was more like justifying my humanity to myself. It wasn't like I was writing to explain to the reader who I was, to sort of validate my existence, to plead for my existence. It was more so like, who are you? Like asking myself the question is like, if you're this, you know, you're this uprooted palm tree, right? Like on Becoming, we say the divinity of the universe, which that was actually the first poem I wrote on Becoming. But it says, the divinity of the universe never failed her, and yet she grew skeptical. We don't know when God became a storm she feared, but here she was, a disheveled palm tree uprooted. And that was sort of the beginning of what became the collection, because I was in a space of sort of the beginning stages of losing my faith, the beginning stages of feeling abandoned by God and my ancestors, and just abandoned by the world, and sort of the beginning stages of having to confront my grief, confront my fears, and sort of confront all of the things, you know, when you're human, you try to avoid because you don't want to experience pain. And then you're sort of, it sort of slaps you in the face, this realization that to live and to love is to experience loss, it's to experience grief, it's to experience, you know, a spectrum of emotions, because that is what it is to be human. But we are conditioned, Me, I am anti-capitalist. And so we are conditioned to exist in such a way in society that sort of does not allow you to feel, because if you feel, then you might have to take a day off, right? If you feel, then you're not the best pawn for capitalism, because if you feel, you might get sick, you might have a bad day, you might, might have PMS symptoms, you might have anxiety, you might have to go see a therapist, you might have to take a vacation. And capitalism doesn't want you to do any of those things. The machine just wants you to be a good worker. And what I realized is I was deeply depressed, and my depression couldn't be cured by, sure, therapy helped, but it couldn't be cured by therapy. Sure, vacations helped, but it couldn't be cured by the vacations. Sure, being in deeper connection to God helped, but it couldn't solely be cured through any of these things, because what was making me depressed was the bigger overarching theme of what has all of us feeling sort of depressed, is living under some form of imperialism or tyranny or capitalism or some form of oppression, right? And so that sort of came to play in this collection, because I'm exploring the things that make me ache, and like the things about womanhood, right? And then being a child of a product of immigration, right? And then like being a first generation American and having to assimilate and understand how to navigate this world that is very classist and elitist and racist, and like all of the microaggressions and the macroaggressions, and this overarching theme, also growing up in the hood and growing up in the projects of New York City, and sort of having to navigate like being embarrassed about, because I went to, middle school and high school, I went to schools where there were kids who were more privileged than me. And so having that conversation of like, oh, like, kids asking like, oh, so like, where do you live? And like having those awkward conversations of understanding that in terms of socioeconomically, I have less advantage and less privilege. And that puts me in a very awkward space as a kid, because how do you, break down the systems of oppression that exist for people who look like me, who are set up to fail? And so like all of that, all of that to me was like consuming me, and I had to make a choice. And so my choice was to write about it because I'm a writer. So I wrote about it, and I survived it, and I'm still surviving it. But it allowed me to sort of decide on whether I thought my humanity was worth writing about. Because for me, a lot of I didn't really learn about Black women writers until I was in high school. And I was just like, where have these women been all my life? Right. And so it took me a while, because these texts weren't being discussed in schools. It took me a while to realize that what I was experiencing was nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, it was the ordinary experience for a Black woman. And so it just, I was like, well, I mean, if I am to survive this, I have to do what any of my favorite Black women do, and they go to work. And like Toni Morrison says, this is when you really got to get to work. And so I got to work, and I'm just glad that it's out there in the world for folks to just, there's so many messages I've gotten of Afro-Latinas who are just like, wow, I'm crying. I didn't know. This is exactly what I needed to hear, feeling affirmed. And to me, I think that is why I write. I write to affirm myself, and I write to affirm others, because like I said, we are decimal points, and we are just these small little specks in a very large industry that I'm glad they're waking up, but it took a long time. It took a long time for women who write these kinds of stories to get any leverage in the industry. So I'm happy to be here.
Oh, you touch on something that I was thinking about asking you, because my romantic expectations of the two of us having similar life experience that connected us were shattered as soon as I realized that although we come from neighborhood colonized islands, I was raised with all the privileges of a white child. And when I moved to the United States, being able to pass as a white person with US citizenship made my immigration experience much easier than you as an Afro-Latina. So it broke my heart to read about all the pain and anger you express so eloquently and so beautifully in your poetry. And I'm glad to hear that the writing process helped you manage and grieve all those emotions.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm one of those I write and I'll cry. I mean, I'm a very emotional being. I am a Scorpio and I was born on the Day of the Dead, and that has a lot to do with it. But I am a believer in my humanity, and that's something that I very very much so hold sacred, is understanding that if we are to survive this, all of us, if we are all to survive this, we have to believe in our collective humanity. And I cherish the folks who have shown me the way. You know, I'm of the class of June Jordan, of Toni Morrison, of Audre Lorde, of Bell Hooks. You know, when I discovered these writers, it completely shifted my world, because I feel like I'm just regurgitating what they've already said. I don't feel like I'm saying anything new. I think I'm regurgitating and amplifying exactly what they've always said. And I'm just very honored to be in a position to be that bridge for someone else, for younger folks, you know, just as they were for me, you know, these radical women. And I'm grateful that there is a space to continue to hold dear those conversations, and to expand on them, and to grow as women, and, you know, as Latinas, and, you know, from all different walks of life.
Oh, that is so profound, and I'm so thrilled that you have accepted that call to put your heart out there. And somebody here is asking me to discuss the concept of set up to fail, but we have like a minute before we have to finish up our conversation. Can you?
Yeah, I can elaborate a little bit. So when I say set up to fail, I say that there was, statistically speaking, I was not set up to be in the position that I am today. And I say that because, statistically speaking, being a first generation American, growing up in the projects of New York City, where I grew up, and also being a Black woman, the expectations was that I would not have been able to become the writer that I am today. And that is just through the, you know, the educational system, the lack of resources, lack of upward mobility in terms of economically, education wise, you know, socially, like all of those things. And then there's this whole other factor of, right, how, you know, we learn to assimilate, right? And if you are not, if you don't know how to navigate a world that is set up to obviously aid the rich and disadvantage the poor, you're sort of stuck in a limbo where no matter how much you strive to thrive, you're always kind of, you know, back at square one. And so that's what I mean when I say set up to fail. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, you know, but it does mean that there is, you're sort of climbing a lot of stairs. You're climbing a lot of stairs on your way there. And sometimes the more stairs you climb, the more stairs can pile up. So it's,
Yeah, but you have demonstrated that you have the tenacity and the commitment to keep climbing and to achieve something that's very hard. And I'm very proud of the work that you have accomplished. And I'm so thrilled that I wish we had 2 more hours, because I had 10 more questions that I would like to ask you. But I think it's time for us to say goodbye. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your work and your heart with us.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, wow. Our thanks to authors V. Castro and Melania Luisa Marte, and their publishers, Del Rey Books and Tiny Reparation Books, for their generous donation of books to our early registrants. Thank you as well to our interviewers, Comadres Viridiana Word and Nidia. Oops, sorry, I moved my words, so I have to look for it. Thank you also to our interviewers, Comadres Viridiana Word and Nidia Diapa, for insightful questions and the enlightening responses that showed such depth to the words and concepts. Thank you for sharing so much of yourself for all of us. I understand some of the fascination of others with your work and the many things you have said about yourself and the world you live in, and to frame the philosophy of living that emerges from your work that amplifies the work of many who came before you. Truly, thank you. We also want to thank our audience for taking the time to join us tonight, and to those that submitted questions. And we'd also like to thank all our volunteers, without whom this book club and all the associated work would not happen. Really, mil gracias to all. Please remember to support our authors by writing a review of their books on sites like Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble. Those reviews carry weight with the publishers as well as with other readers. Buy books to support our authors, and if your library doesn't have one or one of the books you want to read, ask them to order it. And please attend your virtual local book club meetings and bring a friend or two. Remember, our book club is open to men and women, Latinos and non-Latinos. All are welcome. Our January 2024 books are One Brilliant Flame by Joy Castro, Alborada, a poetic memoir across cultures by Nidia Diapa, our very own Nidia. Again, thank you all for your continued support of our book club and Latino literature. And join us in celebrating Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club throughout the year by buying books and supporting Latino authors. Good night. Feliz Navidad y todo, and always read Latino Live.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.